Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
How do we say to our parent friends or our mom friends, hey, I think it's really important that we let our kids develop these skills. And as a group, I wonder if we can look for opportunities for our kids to have some adventures, or we can look for opportunities for our kids to do things more on their own. And the parents that are interested in that are going to be all in. And the parents that are not, are not.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Lynn. Hey, look who I found milling about the Flusterclux cafeteria.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Robin.
It's good to be back.
I know, it's good to see you. And so now everyone, Robin and I probably will have to spend like the whole episode just catching up because we've missed out on our pre-podcast recording catch-up sessions. So it's nice to see you. There's a lot of podcast couples. Did you know that?
Yeah, and Ed and I have actually talked about having a podcast that's associated with our family travel magazine.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have you because there's a topic, a question that we want to address. And you are a very good person to be included in this conversation, I think, because you've had some experience with this.
I've had a lot. And to be fair, you shared this listener question and I was like, I want in because this is so relevant to what I've experienced as well.
So we got this question and I'll read it right now. It says, hello, I'm wondering if there has been a podcast episode about navigating anxiety culture among parent friends. I'm thinking about the culture of safety chatter, hypervigilance, little things quickly becoming big problems, etc. I tried once with a couple friends to gently offer some information about safety chatter and suggest we all work together to change our language. I thought it went okay, but after that conversation, I started getting the cold shoulder from those moms.
It's so sad.
I know. I know.
She says, any tips about navigating this intense culture?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've been there.
Yeah, tell us, Robin.
I just want to share a memory of you and I that this was before the podcast, and I had a mom friend come over and pick up their kid. You were here, you were visiting, and you met this mom for maybe like 3 minutes. Lovely person. She left and you look at me and you were like, woo, catastrophic language. And I wasn't quite tuned to that yet. And I was like, what do you mean? And then you repeated all these different phrases in general chit chat that in fact indicated lots of catastrophic language and terrified and frightening and blah, 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 like in just like normal chit chat. And it was kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, I remember that. And I hear that language a lot, of course, and my ears are tuned to it. People will come up to me after I've just given a talk about how not to be catastrophic, and they'll say things like, I am so terrified that I have completely messed up my kids. It's just an easy pattern to fall into, of course. Do you remember a while ago, Rob, I don't even remember how long ago it was, when we did that episode on mommy wine culture, a sort of a similar feel of mom saying like, do we have to drink at everything? Or can we stop talking about parenting as the reason that I have to have wine every night? And we did get some responses, and I've heard responses of moms saying that it's that same sort of pushback, like you're the buzzkill, you're going to be the wine police. And this is sort of this weird twist because now we're saying like, stop being so nervous. Moms can't win sometimes, it feels like. You've got a mom that's saying like, let's not drink so much. And now we've got a mom saying like, why do we all have to be so anxious? Clearly it's indicative of the times we're living in.
COVID culture impacted that as well. People often would conclude comments on work calls with "stay safe." So that facilitated that being more in the culture of general communication.
And I was actually just cleaning out some emails this morning, and I found this picture that I took that I used to have on a slide where I was out riding my bike, and a neighboring elementary school at the end of the school year had their sign out in front of elementary schools, and all it said was, "Be safe."
Right.
That was like, go off into summer, be safe. And this is well before COVID. And I was like, wow, that is what a message to give to everybody.
Just stay on the couch.
Yeah. And I used to say when I was showing that slide, I would say, all of you are coming back to school. I would be talking to teachers at the beginning of the school year. I'd say, when you see each other, like, oh my gosh, oh, Marjorie, it's so nice to see you. Oh, I love your hair. How was your trip to New Jersey? Oh, I had the safest summer. It was so safe. I mean, we just stayed safe the whole summer. It was fabulous. Right? It just sounds ridiculous.
It does.
What would be some commonplace things that people might say that fall into that safety chatter that feel like a natural thing to say?
Well, they certainly say, so, okay, well, be careful, or make sure you fill in the blank, make sure you do this, or text me when you get there, or pay attention to everything that you do. We said to my kids, think one step ahead. So it's not like we don't say anything. It's funny because I'll give a talk and I'll talk about safety chatter, and then inevitably I'm leaving and somebody goes, well, have a safe ride home. And I always say like, oh, thanks.
We were maybe 6 months into the podcast, and, it was like getting my weekly session with you. And I remember we did something for January. So this would have been January of 2021. And I was like, okay, Lynn, what's the goal here? Ed and I are checking our language every day. How are we responding to our kids? That was still in the middle of COVID, very deeply. How are we responding and talking about that? We did this episode. We called it like getting a black belt in emotional regulation. Emotional management. Like that was probably the goal at the time. But a lot of people would be interested in that if they sort of were given that information and first steps and what the benefits are of really learning to regulate one's emotions and manage one's emotions. But so I think that that's like the challenge is like, if you've got anxiety in the family, anger in the family, all of these things. And because we've talked about what if like the grandparents don't get what you're trying to do of managing anxiety. And then you have friends now who don't get what you're trying to do, can be pretty darn lonely.
It can be lonely. And I think that the way that we talk about our kids right now and the way that parents are really schooled to talk about their kids is that the safer you are, the more vigilant you are, the more involved you are, the more careful you are, the better parent that you are. The more that you're on top of your kids all the time. Do you remember there was a question a while ago about a mom whose kids were not doing their homework? Both kids were flipping out at night with the homework. And she said she felt a lot of pressure to make sure that the homework was done because she couldn't bear the thought of sending her kids into school without having the homework complete. And I think that makes it really hard for parents to pull away from this safety chatter because what they hear wrongfully, right? I don't want them to hear this, but what they hear is you're going to be a neglectful parent. Lenore Skenazy, her whole thing started when she had her son take the subway in New York because he wanted to take the subway. And she wrote an article about it and people flipped out. That if you're not doing the safety chatter, if you're not really concerned, if you're not paying attention, if you're not putting your kid in therapy at the sign of any emotional distress, that means you're neglectful. And so when this mom says to her friends, hey, like maybe we should just not pay attention to the safety chatter, they're like, oh, what a neglectful mom you are. Like, what do you mean you don't want your kids to be safe? And I think that's where it feels so lonely is because you're ostracized as this parent who doesn't care, who isn't paying attention.
They either judge you because they say, how dare you not be a hypervigilant parent? Or they do kind of get it and they feel defensive because they don't have the practice yet of trying to move through that you might be showing them.
And that's a very common response is that the people who tend to get defensive are the ones that sort of know there's a problem. Right? So the mommy culture thing, if you say to the mom who's like, oh my God, I have to have 3 glasses of wine at the end of the day. And you go, gosh, that sounds like a lot. They're not going to say, I know. They're going to say, maybe a lot to you. You don't have my kids. Immediately they get defensive. Saying to an anxious parent, and believe me, I know this well, saying to an anxious parent, I think you're a little high on the safety chatter, or I think that you're mistaking caring for your kids for being really protective or really catastrophic with your kids. They don't like to hear that. I make a lot of people uncomfortable. When I do my parenting talks, I make a lot of people uncomfortable. They're going, I see them elbowing their partner or elbowing their friend that they came with. It's a hard message to deliver. And I would imagine this mom and her group of friends trying to deliver this message, it did not go over well.
Why don't we take a quick break and then we will be right back.
I am so interested in how people do things well. I love watching the masters do their mastery. One class I so enjoyed, Thomas Keller, talking about cooking and techniques. I'm probably not going to ever make a meringue. I'm not. But just watching how he does it and the tips that I picked up, even just talking about salt and pepper, so enjoyable. And really, it becomes kind of this way of learning that's also this amazing escape. So with Masterclass, you are learning from the best so that you can become your best. It's the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month billed annually, a membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. John Kabat-Zinn, meditation, amazing. Esther Perel, she's got so many helpful pieces of information about communication, about love. The classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. That's pretty awesome. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster. masterclass.com/fluster. Do you ever just walk into your pantry and you're just standing there staring and you know you want something healthy and delicious and there's just nothing that's sort of filling that void? Well, this is where Thrive Market comes in. Thrive Market is my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered. You can go in and order foods that have removed over 1,000 harmful ingredients. They also have the Healthy Swap Scanner, which is this amazing thing. You just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swap. I tried the Simple Mills crackers, which were delicious. I'm on a total popcorn kick right now. Lesser Evil popcorn doesn't have any ingredients that I wouldn't eat or that you wouldn't want to give to your kids. They have so many on-site filters that it makes it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in your family. You've got somebody that's gluten-free or maybe a peanut allergy. All you have to do is put in the filter and it gives you the products that work best for you. And who doesn't want to shop with a mission-driven brand? Thrive Market seeks out the highest quality brands that follow ethical practices and strict quality standards. They also accept SNAP EBT and offer free memberships for low-income families through their Thrive Gives program. Are you ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/fluster for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/fluster. thrivemarket.com/fluster. What if you counted the number of skincare products that are currently on your bathroom sink? I counted, and I have 13 different products. Some of them I've only used a few times, but look, JLo Beauty, that's all you need. You can go streamlined with an incredible, simple, and effective skincare routine with JLo Beauty. The thing that I love the best is the Blockbuster Hydrating Cream. You all know I live in New Hampshire. It's been a freezing cold winter. My skin, it's so much better. I can see why 100% of the people from an 8-week clinical study who tried it had smoother skin. JLo products look and feel luxurious with ingredients and packaging that you would expect from the most premium skincare products. Get more glow for less with your skincare routine. Try that JLo Beauty Deluxe Kit for 60 days. If you're not completely satisfied, just return the bottles, even if they're empty, and get your money back. Get the only skincare routine you'll ever need. Head to jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux to receive 20% off plus 3 free limited time offer gifts. Head to jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux for 20% off and 3 free time-limited offer gifts, a $175 value. jlobeauty.com/Flusterclux. Okay, we're back. All right, so what should this mom do? That's the question.
Would you advise her that it's not binary, or as you use as an analogy, it's walking across the Brooklyn Bridge, not a tightrope, and that there is a lot of latitude and space between neglectful parenting and hypervigilance?
Yeah. And the parent that is actually saying, hey, we should pay attention to our safety chatter is far from neglectful, of course, because they've obviously been learning about how anxiety works and trying to be preventative. I think that if I were a mom in this situation, I think that I would not treat all the other moms in the group the same, for one, because there may be some moms that are more willing to hear it and other moms that you're just not going to make any headway with. But I also like the analogy of just being a seed planter. Just with that curiosity, you say, oh, you guys, I came across this article, or I was listening to this episode of Flusterclux, or I've been learning about different patterns that keep anxiety going. And it is amazing how much our language influences the way that our kids see the world. And so you just sort of throw these things out there in a way that gets people curious rather than defensive. That's always the trick, isn't it, in communication, is that you want somebody to step into the conversation rather than put up that barrier to learning more information. But people get very, very defensive about all the things involved in parenting. You know, when do you put your kids to bed? And do you breastfeed or give them a bottle? Do you wean them at this age or that age? All of those questions people immediately get defensive about. I would say to this mom that she has to accept that there's going to be some defensiveness, and the goal is to create curiosity.
I would even go so far as to say, having swum in these waters, the first few years we did the podcast, it was like this, I got a map. I got a map that a lot of people don't have. So I'm navigating this map. And then when those kinds of relevant examples of the anxiety culture would come up, I would shoot my hand up, all enthusiastic.
Hermione Granger.
Totally. And yet, I learned that's not really what to do. I made a lot of social mistakes in my enthusiasm for how much I felt like it was changing our family and our communication.
Right.
The enthusiasm, because it was really working and because it's free and available to everyone, you just got to do this. People don't want to hear it. You don't go around trying to help the whole world that you encounter. You have these appropriate boundaries. There's a time and place to have these conversations.
Yeah. For me, it's the opposite problem. I'm not giving you all this for free.
My advice to this mom is that keep it in the family. You're clearly looking for partner in this, because I think another partner in this, whether it's one of your parents, a sibling, or your spouse or your partner, it's so key. It's so key to get learning together, because we absolutely have been partnering, learning this stuff, challenging each other, and then questioning and asking each other. And I'm just not sure our social circle, unless someone's they've both read your book, they've both gone to hear you speak, they're both committed to doing the work that you're outlining, keep it quiet.
Maybe you don't broadcast it to a large group, but maybe you have a particular friend who you sense might be receptive to this information.
It's sort of like the phone stuff too. The kids right now, there's so much talk about delaying social media and this and that. And I did that Instagram post a while ago of that the moms need to get together and to agree we're not going to give our sixth graders social media. There is great support when the message is consistent about doing something differently. And I also hear, Robin, you're saying when you learn something new, you definitely want to be evangelical about it. the worst person to be around is somebody who just went vegan or somebody who just fill in the blank. It drives people crazy because they get so evangelical about it. I do think that it's worth talking also to your kids about perhaps the parents or the family. This is a little tricky because you don't want to create problems for yourself. You tell your 12-year-old, well, you know that the Simpsons are so anxious. And then the 12-year-old says, my mom said. But it is helpful for your kids to begin to hear that too. That's why I give that assignment to teachers and to parents to talk to their kids about listening for catastrophic language. Because then when the kids start to hear that language, then they're a little bit buffered against it as well. So you can introduce that to your kids, particularly if they're old enough to not blab and get you in trouble.
Well, even better than your kid corrects the friend's parent. Wow, That sounds pretty catastrophic.
Yeah. Which could go well or could go poorly. I was just in a town near you guys, actually. They did a book club with anxious kids, anxious parents, and they're doing another book club with the anxiety audit. And the goal is to get parents to come together to read these books, to discuss these things. And I'm sure that there are a ton of book clubs going on now with Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt's book. Being able to open the conversation in a way that, again, creates curiosity and learning rather than defensiveness. There are going to be people, and I run up against them all the time, they are not going to give up their belief or their commitment that safety is the number one strategy.
And you're seeking certainty in that respect.
Yeah. You're saying better safe than sorry. Like, why wouldn't I want to track my kid? Why wouldn't I want to have a camera baby monitor so that I can watch my child all the time? I was just with one of my college friends, and she has a new mom friend. The mom is a new mom, and she's sort of taken her under her wing because this new mom doesn't have a lot of family around. And she said, watching the way that these two people parent anxiously is hard to take. They are aware of everything their child does. They are tracking everything. They've got everything on apps. They are recording the baby all the time and sending it to the pediatrician. They've got a baby monitor that has a camera on it. She said, when you're with the mom, if the baby is sleeping, she's holding the monitor with her. It's probably on her phone, actually, so that she can have eyes on her baby all the time. It's just part of this culture of better safe than sorry. Why wouldn't we use the technology? That's what parents say to me. Why wouldn't we use it? Why wouldn't we do everything possible to keep our kids safe?
And what would be your response to that question of you?
I got one.
You've got what?
Seeking knowledge is power. Seeking certainty is damaging.
Correct.
Sorry, that was Hermione of me.
Yeah, no. I totally
10 points for Gryffindor.
But that's totally true. And also, the thing you want to ask yourself is, what are my kids not learning? What are my kids not developing when I'm doing all of this stuff? I mean, there was a period of time, I think I haven't seen one recently, but there was this catalog that you could get in the mail with all the safety devices, including helmets for kids that were learning how to walk. What are you not letting your kids develop? What skills, what abilities, that skill of knowing the difference between what's risky and what's not risky. All of those skills are really important for your physical growth, for your relationships, for your emotional growth, for all the things that we want kids to have. So these parents that are clearly just so committed and so loving and really want the best for their kids didn't read the other half of the book that says you also need to make sure that you're letting them develop all these really important skills. They read the first part of the book about how to keep your kids safe. They didn't read the second part of how to let your child develop into an independent, autonomous kid who's capable of managing things flexibly. And what do we see when we don't give them that skill? We see anxiety, we see depression, we see kids having difficulty with friendships, all the stuff that we know happens pretty predictably when kids can't explore the world and when parents are absolutely imparting their worry on their children. I mean, the research is there, everybody. I'm not making this stuff up.
I love the book club idea that you said because it's a great way for this mom who wrote to us. She let some time pass And then she can go to her mom group and say, hey guys, I just read this book and it's really awesome, but there's a lot of information in it. It would make such a great book for us to read together. And yes, you can bring wine. So you yield, right? We're going to do the Lynn book club, but the moms are going to have a glass of wine if they want to. Maybe if they read the anxiety audit too, by the end, they could get to the chapter on
self-medication. Yeah. Self-care versus self-medication.
Right. But I mean, maybe that is the idea, is to try and home grow your support group if your family comes up dry. There's just not the right person in your family to help out.
There's a great loss of adventure for children when they are so bubble wrapped. And they are, in a way, protected, but they lose so much. And I don't think children, ours, other people's, look back on COVID and say, that was such a joyous time full of adventure and new experiences. It was very isolating. We have a friend whose brother is a emergency pediatric doctor. And during COVID, because no one was playing outside, no one was taking part in sporting events, they just sat around the ward for weeks at a time. The epitome of safety. No one was getting injured, but in the grand arc of it, it was very problematic for the children who were all being so denied adventure and experience.
Yeah. And I think that they heard at that time, particularly at the beginning when we were all so scared, that the safety chatter was really all they heard and all they saw. If anxiety was watching from wherever anxiety watches, they were like, this COVID thing is really, really helping me spread the message. And these parents, particularly parents of kids who probably the ages of 3 to 6, didn't get practice with that initial letting kids go, didn't get practice with the skid knee and with the fall down and with the fight with the other kids, didn't get practice with the playground skirmishes. And those parents really, along with the kids, but those parents really didn't see that you're capable of managing injury or you're capable of managing disagreement. They didn't get that practice.
Has anyone written that article where, based on the age of the child during 2020 and 2021, what the typical developmental skills would have been that were delayed or not taught by age group? Because you referenced how when everyone went back into the classroom, the little kids didn't understand they had to stop and raise their hand and ask to go to the bathroom, got up and went, which wouldn't have happened without COVID, without that. So like everyone had like a certain skill set that was developmental based on what they missed out on.
Yeah, middle schoolers really missed out on a huge part of social development. So a lot of those kids that entered 9th grade after being out of school for 7th and 8th grade, teachers were saying their emotional maturity and their relationship maturity was so impaired. Yeah, those little 2nd graders that came to school, they wanted to eat all the time, they wanted to pee all the time, and they wanted to move all the time because that's how they had spent their early childhood. I don't know if anybody's written that article. I've seen a lot of things about that, heard a lot of things about that, but I don't know if I've come across one article that sort of lays it out.
So, Lynn, we've been talking about catastrophic language, and maybe some new listeners might not know exactly what that means. Are we just talking about tsunamis and earthquakes?
That's called the language of natural catastrophes.
Okay. See, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Catastrophic language is when you go to the worst case scenario. So catastrophic language is when you use adjectives like horrible or terrible, or so my son didn't get picked for the part he wanted in the play and it was devastating. Or if we go to that activity and it doesn't work out, I mean, my kid is going to be traumatized. Or this was just the worst thing ever. Like, I've never seen anything that was so awful. That's catastrophic language, where you're just talking up at a level. Somebody else listening would be like, really? Not getting a part in the play? I'm not sure that that's traumatic. So it's really bringing your language down. Catastrophic parents talk about worst case scenarios. They think about worst case scenarios. So the child's getting on their bike to practice riding their bike without their training wheels on. And the parents, instead of saying like, all right, well, pay attention, make sure you have your helmet on. The parent's like, all right, now pay attention because cars can hit you. And if you fall, you could have a serious brain injury. Do you understand that? So it's leveling up to this emergency place. That's catastrophic language. Safety instruction, fine. What horrible things could befall you at any moment? Catastrophic language.
The toddler swim lesson I did with my daughter, where a little boy ventured off of the wall of the pool without his mom. She grabbed him very vigorously and said, "Don't you do that. You will die like Uncle Sherman."
Oh,
It was like, oh, whoa. This was long before the podcast. I was a new mom, but I was like, that's not right.
Yeah, that I don't think that was a good idea. Yeah. Talked about a lot of things. We've talked about safety chatter and catastrophic language and this poor mom who's trying to inject some flexibility and adventure into her parent group because she's acutely aware now of how anxious parents restrict kids taking chances and adventures and that kind of stuff. Both of you said we don't want to go fully on one side or fully on the other, but I think it really is okay, one, for this mom to say, like, hey, how about we have a book group, or how about we talk about this? Just like we're talking about with phones now, the more support we get among parents limiting phone time as a group, the better outcomes we'll have, rather than you just doing it alone in your family. So I think if this mom can sort of spread the word, and it sounds like she was trying to spread the word, she wasn't trying to be evangelical about it, but she was hit smack in the face with the defensiveness of people. But how do we say to our parent friends or our mom friends, hey, I think it's really important that we let our kids, we let our girls, we let our boys develop these skills. So as a group, I wonder if we can look for opportunities for our kids to have some adventures, or we can look for opportunities for our kids to do things more on their own. And the parents that are interested in that are going to be all in. And the parents that are not, are not.
Well, you started that sentence with, I think. But in reality, like, you are the actual expert. So you could say that to one of your friends, like, I think. Whereas, like, isn't it safer for that mom to say, I'm reading this book by Lynn Lyons, or I'm listening to her podcast and she specializes in managing anxiety, and she demonstrates the importance of blank. I really want to work on that. I think that sounds like a very valuable thing to practice. Is anyone interested in that? Because I think that's the whole thing. Just because if you say, like, I think it's very important to kids to be off their phones, you create the defensiveness because you don't have the initials behind your name. Like,
You're right. And you could also say, this mom could also say, gosh, have you guys been noticing all of the stuff on Facebook about anxiety and safety? And gosh, I mean, I'm just inundated with all this stuff that makes my kid and make me feel like the world is such a dangerous place. I just wonder if I can make a difference in letting my kids have adventures, blah, 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 blah. Like, you just make a comment, you make an observation about how all of this stuff is just everywhere. The other night when I was giving the talk, parents were asking questions and they were pushing back a little bit about, well, I don't think that it's bad. And I kept saying, like, the way that I make my living for the last at least 10 years is to go around and say, hey, everybody, it's getting worse. If what you're doing is working, then I wouldn't have a job. I would be standing up here saying, like, we're all good. It's getting worse. And there's something to be said for a parent to say, gosh, I've just noticed these trends. Have you noticed all of this information? Have you heard about blah, blah, blah? It seems that maybe we need to try something different. And we're going to try something different. It's tough for sure. The anxiety culture, the safety culture, the anxious mom culture is powerful. They make you feel badly about your parenting. They make you feel guilty. I've told this story a gazillion times. My kids were at the park. They were in the mud. I didn't care because they were 1 and 3 or 2 and 4, and they were having a great time. And this mom came up to me and said, oh, I can't believe you let your children get so muddy. And I said, well, mine are washable, aren't yours? But had I not been me, or had I not been sort of not going to take that from her, I could have felt really bad. I could have questioned what I was doing. Like, oh, am I not supposed to make my kids muddy? Is this dangerous to them? Am I being a bad mom? It's such a hot button for parents to feel like they're being good parents, and we feel so easily convinced that we're doing the wrong thing. That's why this mom gets pushback.
Going to take another quick break and then we'll come right back.
I saw this funny video recently where people were coming back into their house after they'd been away on vacation and they were saying, "Oh God, is this what our house smells like to everybody else?" If you have cats, you really know how important it is to make sure that your litter box does not stink. I love my kitty. I don't love her stink. We are using Pretty Litter. It obliterates odors so we can enjoy all the wonderful scents of spring and not smelling a litter box. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula traps odor and moisture. It's ultra absorbent, it's lightweight, low dust, and 1 6-pound bag works for up to a month. Pretty Litter also gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in my little kitty Pippa, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more. Since Pretty Litter ships free right to my door, I never run out. And believe me, you don't want to run out of cat litter. I don't have to go out in the cold and lug those huge tubs from my store. Pretty Litter helps keep my house smelling fresh and clean. Try it and you'll love it. Go to prettylitter.com/Flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/Flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/Flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. All right, who doesn't love the good things in life? Right? A little luxury, but who likes to not pay high prices? I discovered Quince. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices. So Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach. I got a Mongolian cashmere sweater, $50. It feels great. It looks great. All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman, passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster.
Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Okay, so now back to the show.
So Ed, the power of the mom anxiety culture is so strong. What about the dad anxiety culture?
Yeah, it's absolutely there. That sounds like a leading question.
I wish I had an answer, but I'm not a dad.
Well, but I mean, here's the interesting thing is, are dads given more permission, particularly with their sons, to push them and let them go a little bit more? Because as much as we try and not pretend that there are huge gender differences, dads raise their sons differently. And I think that if you were an anxious dad, if you were at the playground and your kids were playing, or if your son was up and you were like, be careful, hey, watch out, oh, don't let, I think that that would not be as socially acceptable as a mom doing it. I think that the dads would sort of turn on you and be like, Ed, geez, chill out. What do you want your kid to be, a blah, blah, blah? Like, I think there is still that very strong gender difference that dads are supposed to push and moms are supposed to protect. And I know it's a gender stereotype, but there is a lot of research when they give a guy a baby and they tell the guy that the baby is a girl, and then they give the guy a baby and they tell the guy the baby is a boy, and he interacts with the baby differently.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say, if the dad is saying that at the playground, how many times is that dad actually talking to his daughter and not his son?
Could be, yeah. But I don't think there's nearly as much room in parenting culture for dads to be that way than there is for moms to be that way. You think about it, even with the mommy wine culture. Like if a dad was posting, God, my kids are driving me crazy. I got to go home and have a shot of whiskey. I think people would be like, oh, God, what's wrong with? But a mom can say, oh, my kids are driving me crazy. I have to go home and have a glass of wine. I just think there are differences in what's accepted from dads and what's accepted from moms, for sure.
What do you think would be the difference between a child who was climbing a tree and their parents were shouting, be careful, come down, you'll fall, you'll break your neck, versus the other side where a parent did not behave in such a way consistently? How would that child present differently to you?
That child would be more cautious. The first child, if the parent was using catastrophic language and being very protective, that child would be less willing to take any risk. So we really want kids to be able to tell the difference between what's risky and what's not. They wouldn't have a clear idea in their heads about the difference between feeling comfortable or feeling vulnerable versus feeling in danger. So everything that felt uncomfortable or everything that felt new or challenging would be put into the bucket of dangerous. Whereas kids that are raised with, a more versatile language of, hey, you're way too high up in that tree, buddy. You need to hold on tight or watch what you're doing, and then are allowed to walk somewhere with their friends or allowed to ride their bikes or that kind of stuff. Those kids are going to have a better internal compass of how far they can push themselves and how dangerous something is. Now, there are some kids that, for a variety of reasons, do not have those breaks at all. These are kids that are more impulsive, that get themselves into trouble. These are kids, a lot of times, if you have an ADHD kid. So we have to have a different approach with them when we're talking about the other end of the spectrum. But when we're talking about how do anxious parents impact what their kids do, it really has to do with the level of reasonable risk taking. And then the autonomy scales show it over and over and over again. Kids that are raised with constant safety chatter, talking about the world as a dangerous place, they do not do things independently. They have trouble with that. They have trouble with that when they're in high school. They have trouble with that when they're in college. They have trouble with that when they get their driver's license. So it's not subtle, for sure, from my perspective.
Do you feel like if you were at a playground, I mean, our kids are older now, but do you feel like there would have been a mental pause that you might have taken before you would have said, be careful or whatever, in a way that maybe I didn't, Ed?
Probably, but I think we've chatted about this with Lynn for a long time. So that's been helpful. We've had that advantage.
It's the family talk.
Yeah. It's something that we talk about with frequency.
And that's something, I work with families for long periods of time. I even wrote an article about this. I think I may have said this when we were talking to Noah. I'm a brief therapist in terms of my orientation. Let's get to work. Let's fix the problem. Let's come up with solutions. Let's be active. But I have long-term relationships with families because they come and go. And I think one of the things that I enjoy and take great pride in is when families tell me that this becomes a part of their conversation and that they check each other. So if they're going off and doing something, they're really aware that their goal is to let their child venture, figuratively or literally venture a little farther than their anxiety would want their child to venture. And so it does become a part of the conversation, for sure.
Definitely define brief therapy for us, because when you explained it to me, it was like, oh, that's not what I thought. So a lot of people outside of the industry don't know it.
Yeah. So the way that brief therapy started, and so therapy prior to the 70s, really, and into the 70s, was really thought of in that psychoanalytic model where you went twice a week for 10 years at least. And when the brief therapist came along, this was Milton Erickson and some other people, and they were saying, we don't have to go so slow with this. We have to figure out where the problem is, and we have to work to interrupt the patterns. And we can do it quickly. We don't have to waste all this time sort of tiptoeing in. Let's go in, let's figure out where the problem was. And so the whole goal was to shorten the length of time that somebody needs to be in therapy to address a problem. The thing where then it sort of flipped on its ear is that, and this is boring psychotherapy talk, But managed care came in the late 80s, early 90s, and they were like, brief therapy, yeehaw, we're going to give people 5 sessions to get over the death of their mother. And it went way far the other way. That's why I say I'm a brief therapist in that I'm going to get to work quickly. I'm going to offer solutions. It's going to be active. And I'm going to try and get somebody out of therapy as soon as reasonably possible. But does that mean that they're going to be out of therapy forever? No, people come and see me for a period of time and then they disappear for years and then they come back. But it's a mindset of how do I get this person or how do I get this family moving as quickly as possible? This is why when therapists say to me, well, I meet with a family 4 times and I gather all the information and I do an assessment and I'm building rapport. And I'm like, 4 sessions? Like in 4 sessions, I can get a lot of work done. It's just a mindset of let's get to work.
You may not always have the latitude of dozens of sessions, be it economic constraints, time constraints.
That's right.
Buy-in from other family members.
Yeah, exactly. Just the convenience of it or the lack of convenience. So 4 sessions could take like 3 months for a family to do because they've got to take time off from work and they don't have the resources, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm just going to hit the ground running. And brief therapy really said, we don't have to spend all this time. Build rapport quickly by giving parents, in my case, by giving parents really helpful information. That's rapport building. And I always say, no other profession does this. You don't go in and talk to your dental hygienist for 4 appointments and then she gets to cleaning your teeth. You go in, you open your mouth, she cleans your teeth. Let's get to work.
Can I make a shout out? So a lot of the people who are listening are people who also indirectly then later hire you to come to talk to their school communities, the school professionals, the school parents. Wouldn't it be great? And I bet some schools already do this, but prior to talking, it wouldn't make sense. But if you got the email to everyone the next day, thanks for coming to hear Lynn Lyons speak. Are you a parent interested in joining other parents in a book group to work on these things together? Both of you talked about the access to these kinds of resources isn't always there, but the peer-to-peer support with the guides of what you write in the book and the other things that are available could have such an impact, and it would really make work that is lifelong and difficult, but also more connecting and effective.
Yeah, I love that idea. And that is what has happened in the town I was just in, right near you guys. They are doing this book club. And the thing that also happens, I think, is that here are all these parents that came out to hear me talk. And everybody feels a little excited or inspired. They're like, okay, I can do this because my message is really like, it's hard work, but it's not complicated. You guys can do this. And so if schools can use that momentum and use that enthusiasm and create groups like that, I think that's a fabulous idea. I love how that happens. Sometimes schools, they have a book group with my books before I come to talk. So then the people who read the book come. And I think that's great too. But I think probably less people, I know that less schools do that. Yeah.
I think you're very good at talking to people at their most vulnerable, thinking of their kids who are struggling. And I think you have a very special gift of making people hear difficult messages without becoming defensive. That's your superpower. Actually, you have a few, but that's definitely one of them.
Spoonful of sugar, baby.
Why don't you remind people of the titles of your books, just if they're not aware?
I thought you were going to say, why don't you remind Lynn of her other superpowers? And I was like,
Crying. I'm really good at crying. The parenting book, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents, that I wrote with Reed Wilson. And then there's the companion book for kids, which is called Playing with Anxiety, Casey's Guide for Teens and Kids. And that follows the same puzzle pieces. Then there's a clinical book that clinicians can look at if you want, but that's more like a textbook. That's the book that nearly killed me. And then the book that came out in 2022, The Anxiety Audit. And that's for adults, and teens really like that book too, because it goes through the really consistent patterns.
Can anyone find the catastrophic language that Lynn used in that description?
Yes, it nearly killed me. That is a little catastrophic, but at the time felt absolutely accurate. I wrote 3 books in 3 years. So it was 2013, 2014, and then 2015. And the one that came out in 2015 was the academic book. It's like 385 pages. It has almost 600 references. I will never do that again. And I don't care if that's a global statement. I swear I will never do that again.
Anxiety Audit came out in 22 or 23?
October of 22.
Since COVID, I can't keep my years straight.
I know, it is crazy. So I had an interesting thing happen to me the other night when I was doing a webinar that had never happened to me before.
What was that?
So I was sitting here in my office, which is attached to my house, and I'm chatting away, boopy doopy doopy doo, and I start just smelling a little bit of smoke, just a little bit of smoke. And I think I'm hearing just a little bit of like crackling, and I'm listening to see if my husband is going to come down the stairs because I wasn't hearing any other human noise. And the smoke started getting like more and more pronounced. And finally, I just had to say to everybody, hey, hold on a second. I think my house is on fire. And I had to stop, and there was smoke billowing. He had put on a pork chop and had gone upstairs and was watching tennis, which he totally loves to watch. And he had completely forgot about it. The moment that he heard me come out my office was the moment that the smoke hit him. It was just like full of smoke. I did hit mute before I got off with people.
That was smart.
And I was like, the house. I was screaming, and he goes running down. And then I had to like shut the door and come back in and go like, hi, everybody. So I'm back. So I was right. There was black billowing smoke. I can still smell it. This was on Monday night, and I could still smell it in my house. But that never happened before.
Have you checked the batteries in your smoke detectors?
Well, and that's what my husband said, is that none of the smoke detectors were going off. So it was actually kind of a little gift that we realized that the battery was okay, but I think the smoke detector we've got new smoke detectors.
You haven't changed those batteries since you became a published author.
Yeah, that's right. Those batteries, the expiration date on the battery was 2005. That can't be a problem. Yeah. Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.